Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. Things have sort of come full circle here. We made 198 videos on the channel, which I never would have imagined, and we started 5 years ago. Why does that sound like it's going full circle? Because this car was featured in, I think, the second or third video we did at the start of that. So we're up to 198 videos. And we're currently on 198,000 plus change subscribers. So we're probably going to hit the 200,000 subscribers and the 200 videos at the same time. That's not through design, that's just the way it happened. This car is a very, very important car in car history generally. Why? Because this is the 6th ever production Lamborghini. It was one of 14 Lamborghinis built in 1964. Ferruccio Lamborghini literally had bought a piece of land in Sant'Agata Bolognese, just outside Bologna. He had the vision to make a car factory there. It was very much in the Italian industrial architecture style of the period, with sloping glass roofs, a bit like a hacksaw blade, and tiled floors, terracotta tiled floors. State of the art in the 1960s. He launched the 350 GT after the one-off 350 GTV. He launched the 350 GT, and it was all incredibly, unspeakably fresh and fledgling. It really was. He poured gazillions of lira into this project. This was his his passion. He'd been snubbed by Enzo Ferrari because of a car that we have got here, another car that we're on our way to restoring, a famous Ferrari, which will be even more famous shortly when it's finished. But the early 350 GTs were literally handcrafted in every way. Every piece of bright work is hand-molded brass, hand extruded, beautifully hand formed. The bodywork on this is hand formed aluminium over a wooden buck. The engine was the detuned version of the Bizzarini racing car engine, the 4-cam V12. In this form, in 3.5 litres, hence 350 GT. But this is number 6. This is the 6th ever production Lamborghini. And it was the first ever Lamborghini to break ground in France. This was the Paris Motor Show car of 1964. Fantastically important car because Ferruccio Lamborghini took on the establishment and, dare I say it, won. Enzo Ferrari, down the road in Modena, was producing very interesting and very elegant cars around about the early 60s. The 250 GTE, then the 275, either 2-seater or 4-seaters. It took a while for Ferrari to catch up with independent rear suspension. They were still running live axles on cars up until, I think, 1965, when the 275 GTB came out. They also didn't have 4-cam V12s. They had triple carburetors, a lot of them, instead of 6. They didn't have 4 cams, so in 2 or 3 areas of technology, Ferruccio absolutely just knocked Ferrari out of the park. And for years, people said, oh, they were so fanciful, Lamborghinis, we shouldn't really take them seriously, not like those proper manufacturers down the road in Modena, in Maranello. And people sort of just regarded Lamborghinis as the poor relation. And now, these cars, I mean, Countachs and Miuras have rocketed in value over the last couple of years, and they still are doing. Miuras, without exaggeration, Miuras are now worth 10 times what they were 20 years ago. 10 times. And this car is such an important piece of automotive history because it was hand brought to life at every stage before Lamborghini had really established a production line. And a production line is not a production line like knocking cars out by the thousand. Each one is hand-built, but this was hand-built. So we did a restoration on this car about 3 years ago. When in the previous video, it's red metallic, a beautiful burgundy red metallic, but this is the colour it left the factory in, azzurro metallizzato, simply called blue metallic. Strangely enough, it was a Fiat colour because Ferrari weren't established as because Lamborghini, wash my mouth out, weren't established as a car manufacturer. They actually they cherry-picked lovely colours from the colour palettes of other established car companies. So whether it was Salchi or PPG or whoever it was in those days, Leckler, these are modern, obviously modern Glasurit, modern paint companies. They simply took the paint from those, and this car, I mean, it looks gorgeous in this colour. This is the exact original colour. We matched it. It took a great deal of trouble to do that. And Tony at More Than Classic Cars down in Staffordshire did the bodywork and paintwork on this car, and it's just stunning. The way this aluminium, this hand-formed aluminium, is all blended in, these are quite close panel gaps for a 1960s car. You would normally have production cars with wider panel gaps than that, and the reason they were able to do that is because it was literally hand-teased out of sheet aluminium. This is a skin. The real framework is underneath, so it's the Touring of Milan Superleggera bodywork, super light, which they patented. Unfortunately, Touring of Milan went bust in 1967, 68, and the Superleggera patent went with them. But it's a heavy gauge underframe, punt style underframe, not like Ferrari, separate chassis, and then a tertiary framework, which was small square section tubes built up around the chassis to start to support the bodywork, and then the hand-formed aluminium on top. Aston Martin used the same system on the DB4s, 5s, and then the 6s after Touring had gone, unfortunately. They continued to use the super light construction, but not connected with Touring particularly. A beautiful, beautiful car, and again, the bodywork being aluminium is far more exotic than most Ferraris of the period or other cars, because they were using pressed steel panels. So a whole different level. It's so easy to overlook the impact that Lamborghini had. He really did move the goalposts when this car was announced. It was such a revolution, really. What happened with the early cars, when they went back to the factory for a service in 3 or 4 years' time after they were built, even 2 years actually, what had happened was Gianpaolo Dallara, Ingegnere Gianpaolo Dallara, who I had the pleasure of spending some time with, and was that close to restoring a Miura for him, actually. But we sourced a Miura, Olivier Nemesh and myself, for Gianpaolo Dallara, which was a fantastic privilege. But he was responsible for a great deal of the wonderfulness that came out of Lamborghini in the 60s. And he came up with a more reliable and more sturdy 4-litre engine to replace the 3.5. And because Dallara had developed this strengthened and more powerful 4-litre V12, it was an easy sell when people took their 350 GTs back to the factory for Lamborghini to say, for X many lira, we will take your original engine out and we will put a stronger, more powerful 4-litre engine in. The sweet spot is the alloy bodywork and the 4-litre engine, because this car, with that combination, is not terribly heavy. It's just over a ton. It should go like the wind, really, with a 4-litre, 300 brake horsepower engine. It really should. So we're going to just be looking at that. The reason why the car is here, it's come from a very important collection in Denmark. We have arranged for the car to come over for a service and a check over and a prep, because the car is actually, it's been invited to appear in the Cartier Style Luxe Concours at Goodwood House during the Goodwood Festival of Speed this year. The class is Touring of Milan, styling and construction. So this car is fitting right in with that. It's just perfect, hand in glove for that particular concours. Goodwood and myself have collaborated. His Grace the Duke of Richmond and his team and I have collaborated for a number of years on different things, quietly. And this car is part of that collaboration. So it's coming here, it's being prepped, because whether the cars are stood on the lawn or not, I would like them to work properly. If they leave here, thank you very much. So we're going to get this car back into good fettle, give it a check over. Let's see if we can get the engine running properly, and it's been shunted around this car, I suspect, started, stopped, which happens with classic cars if you need to move them, because the bodywork is so delicate. You don't want to start leaning on this and pushing it if you can help it. But the result of that is spark plugs get fouled up. The 12-cylinder engine becomes an 11, 10, 9, 8-cylinder engine. And I have to quite often rejuvenate cars like this back onto 12 cylinders. So yeah, let's take a bit of a dive into chassis number 109, which is the 6th ever Lamborghini production car. What's not to like? Well, we did a lot of work to this car when we restored it. The interior, we did a selective job on the interior because the interior was actually beautiful as it was. And we are not in the business of ripping people off just to make extra money by replacing things that are actually very good. So Craig made up a beautiful set of carpets for it, but most of the leather work is actually original. We did do a lot of detailing on the engine. This is the 4-litre engine. This is the later one. But as an extra bonus ball, we had the block, the original matching numbers cylinder block for the 3.5-litre V12 to match the car 0109. And the block was actually condemned by somebody many years ago as scrap. It was a bare casting. And rightly so, really, it was in a bit of a mess, the block. It was sort of just a lump of aluminium and that was it. But we managed to, through some clever engineering at the time, various tricks, which I unfortunately can't share because that's part of our intellectual property, we were able to source 350 GT, essentially, from another car that was out of the car and surplus to requirements anyway. We actually made one complete engine using the original block with all original 350 GT parts, and that we made that and got it running again. The owner said, "I really would like you to do this." And we said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "I would really like you to do this." So we said, in that case, we will really take it seriously, which we did, and we got a result. So we made up, the team here made up a lovely display stand for that engine. It's got some very special carburetors on it, which were more like the original test prototype engine, vertical Weber carburetors, which could never have been used on a production car because of the very, very low bonnet clearance. If you had vertical carburetors, they'd come up to about there, and you'd have a huge power bulge, which would look quite unnecessary and unseemly. So they went for horizontal carburetors, Weber DCOEs, and that really set the template for Espadas, Isleros, Yaramas, Countach. They all had the horizontal Weber carburetors to keep the height of the engine down. So we had the other engine. We did a startup of that engine in Denmark with a little party for people to admire it, and we can actually slot that video in and just see it burst into life, the original engine. I'm feeling the pressure.
It's worth a challenge, isn't it? Should we try if it will actually run here?
Yes. It is very noisy. So if people of a nervous disposition, you can leave now. it's been a while since this car has run properly, so what I'm going to do is do a few tricks to see if I can coax this back onto 12 cylinders without taking the spark plugs out. Even though some of them are not working, I've got these, which are called chicken pliers, because they're for people who don't want to be electrocuted by 36 kilovolts or whatever it is. So they're made of plastic. As you can see, they've had quite a lot of use. And I can pull the leads off without fear of getting a nice 40,000 volt electric shock or something along those lines. So I'll do that. And there's a particular trick here. If I disconnect a lead and offer it up to the spark plug, so that the spark has to jump through an air gap to the top of the spark plug, I can actually sometimes bring that spark plug back to life, and we can get it running on 12 cylinders. Sometimes we can do it, sometimes we can't, but I'm going to have a go before I start tearing the plugs out and putting a new set in. Yeah, we'll just see if I can get it running on 12 pots without any more action than simply doing a bit of intuitive nerdiness with a pair of chicken pliers. So here we go. I'm now just going to pull each lead off in turn. Now that is making no difference whatsoever. You can hear the engine note is slightly rising there. It's thinking about it, but it's not happy. Yeah, they're sort of thinking about it, but not quite as spectacularly as I would like. Let's try this one. Oh, now that one is working. Never worked with Lamborghinis or animals while being filmed live. It's actually getting better. I'm going to try the other side now. Yeah, that one has sort of come back to life, actually. Yeah, this trick is not working. I think we're going to have to put a new set of plugs in it, full stop. It's not having the effect that I would like it to have. So back to the drawing board. That's part of tracing these problems. It's getting better, but no, it's going to need a new set of plugs in it, unfortunately. When I was a young kid, watching the likes of the Italian Job on TV, I never thought I would be interested with some of the cars that I've been interested with. It's worth looking back through the videos. 2 or 3 years ago, we got sent from far away, I shall say no more, the Lamborghini Countach, owned by Ferruccio Lamborghini himself, the one and only white car, and we had the privilege and the responsibility of bringing that car back to life, which we did. And that car I drove along this very bumpy road, this very same road, and here is another seminal moment. I'm driving the 6th ever Lamborghini, effectively, and this is just sensational. I'm just warming it up at the moment, as ever. The level of craftsmanship in these cars is incredible, because everything was so hand-built. Everything is just delightful. It really is. What a machine. And if it can survive this road surface, it can survive anything. We even went to the trouble, Craig went to the trouble of getting the very unusual headlining material, which is almost the same as later Italian headlining materials from the 1960s, but it's not. And we actually got the exact right one. So the attention to detail. There is no point in restoring a car like this unless you do it properly, first time. And even this steering wheel is a delight. It's actually, because this is a left-hand drive car and it's set up for the camber on that side of the road, that's why the wheel is offset. If you actually put this on the other side of the road, which I shall not demonstrate, then it sort of sorts itself out. It's all clever stuff. It's straining at the leash, this car. All the gauges are reading beautifully. Craig retrimmed this dashboard in leather that we got specially that looked like the original. It's a car that we can be very proud of, really. I think the team did a wonderful job. Everybody chipped in, and the suspension, as ever, it hasn't really been that noise. It hasn't really been used much, but it's beginning to come to life. The shock absorbers are going to free up as we do a few more times in the car. It will get some road testing this before it goes to Goodwood, because I simply can't tolerate cars that don't work properly. I'd rather have a car, call me odd, but I'd rather have a car that drives fabulously as it was intended to, or better, than one that looks glorious but actually hardly works at all. They're called in aircraft circles hangar queens, because it's a plane that looks pretty stuck in the corner of the workshop, but it don't work. The throttle response is increasing as things are warming up. Those 12 butterflies straining to open. Good day in the office road testing a car like this. It really is. This must have been an incredible car in period in the 1960s. Just incredible. You know, empty roads, no speed limits. I'm sure this was a genuine 150 mile an hour car, particularly with the 4-litre engine, probably more. Yeah. Good spadefuls of torque as well. We'll just turn around here and open the taps. Here we go. Something has gone wrong here. So, yeah, it's not happy. I'm going to take this back to the office and we'll have another go. This is real-world classic car testing. There's no substitute for driving these cars. I suspect it has an electrical fault on one of the ignition systems. We'll limp it back to the garage. This is what it's all about. Well, we had a rather dramatic loss of power when we were out on the road, just when we'd got the car back on 12 cylinders. And the culprits, this is opening up a potentially interesting can of worms, and everybody will have a different opinion on this, which is part of the fun of classic car restoration and maintenance. But this is a set of contact points out of this distributor here. This engine is, like a lot of V12s, is essentially two 6-cylinder engines sharing a common crankshaft at the bottom there. But on this, you've got two ignition systems, one for each bank. Normal V12 firing order is 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. And the way this works is it's that one, and then number 7, then that one, then number 11. It's staggered across the banks basically and manufacturers over the years have manipulated the firing order to give all sorts of different results. I remember Ferrari with the 456, I think, was the first one. They actually altered the firing order on that engine to try and redistribute how the 4-stroke cylinders worked, how the induction, compression, power and exhaust, how they worked in concert with each other to give more low-down torque. This was something Ferrari did on that engine. And the 456, I mean, V12s can generally be a bit short on torque, particularly compared to the likes of a V8, something like that. So Ferrari very cleverly changed that in the mid-90s. But this engine is, as I say, it's 2 6-cylinder engines, and we've elected on this engine, when we did the restoration, to keep the ignition system standard. That is a mechanical ignition system with trigger points in each distributor. And that was a decision on our part, because I've actually found, first of all, this is a show car. I mean, obviously we want it to work properly, but to have a great big electronic ignition amplifier stuck outside is not really what we want. So we've got the original ignition with the Magneti Marelli ballast resistor here, are all original, and that means that the points inside the distributors have to be original as well. There's a cam that works these, that opens and closes them. 0.4 of a millimeter is the gap. It's tiny gap. But we've had various interesting results using more modern electronic ignition systems. I could list them. There's a list as long as your arm of electronic ignition upgrades, quote unquote, for cars such as this. Some of them are abysmal. We had terrible problems with Harry's Espada a while back with a company that shall remain nameless. Their attitude stank, the product broke, just all wrong, and it was very frustrating for both Harry and the team and myself, because we were on wild goose chases all the time, looking for faults with this ignition system. But others can be very good. But then you get the added difficulty of the fact that these are the infrastructure, the distributor cap, the leads, etc., are of a certain technology. This was in the 1960s, the original technology then, and you can actually get to the point where the level of spark through here is so strong it actually starts to burn out the distributor cap and rotor arm, and the leads aren't really up to it either. So there is a fine balance. Obviously modern petrol engines have incredibly powerful electronic ignition systems developed over, I mean, the electronic ignition system has been with us since the late 60s. Ferrari were one of the first to use it, the Dinoplex system as it was called, on their Fiat and Ferrari Dinos round about 1967. And it was a huge thing, like this, huge box. And the problem is it did actually break because the transistor technology wasn't yet good enough to do the job properly. So it's had, electronic ignition has evolved hugely, as it has with other forms of automotive technology, but it's a real trade-off. So we elected to keep this one on its original points ignition system, and normally that's fine. These points are extremely well engineered, as they are on a lot of Marelli distributors. They're a work of art, but the points have actually broken. Pete has got his multimeter out, he's done some measurements, and the points actually, the spring on them has broken. It's actually, this is spring steel, so the points are designed to open and close as the cam pushes them round, and this is actually broken. The outer, there's 3 leaves on this, 3 different pieces of spring steel, and it's actually broken. So we put a new set of points in. And again, modern points aren't the same quality as the older points. They're not made in Italy under the guiding hand of Magneti Marelli. They're made elsewhere, and they can vary in quality hugely. This material is called Tufnol, that the points are made of, and this heel actually determines the opening and closing of the points as they go round. And Tufnol there are modern equivalents, plastic equivalents, but they're not quite as hardy as the original Tufnol points. So what do we do? There is no 100% rock solid, sure answer. As I say, I've had some very unpleasant experiences with the electronic ignitions. Some of them have worked beautifully. But on this occasion, for originality, because this is such a precious car, we kept the ignition system original. So long and short of it is, we've put a new set of points in there, we've checked the other set them up, and the car is now ready for a run again. So yeah, I guess road test V2 coming up. Well, it's been a bit of a journey to get this car back on the road. Just these things happen, but we've given the ignition system a birthday. We got some high quality points, the condensers, the little capacitors. The condenser on the ignition system is designed to store energy like a capacitor. You can tell the quality of a condenser. It's a tiny, tiny little cylindrical object by the amount of wire that's wrapped around it inside it. It can be up to 3 meters long, the amount of wire that's wrapped around it, to store energy so that when the points open, it doesn't cause arcing on the points. It doesn't cause a lot of electricity to flow through the contact points as they make and break. This is terribly old technology, but it actually works. The Marelli distributors that are fitted to these cars are actually a work of art, really. Rather different to the last time I drove this car a little while back. And what a joy and a responsibility to be driving this, the 6th ever production Lamborghini. I do have to pinch myself when I drive the likes of this and Ferruccio's Countach and even a Miura out for the day. We are up to temperature now, so let's just open the taps and see how this car should go very well. I've actually forgotten what this car is like to drive because it's been a while. Here goes. Woohoo! That is a fast car. I remember Starsky and Hutch, that wonderful American TV series, and Paul Michael Glazier, who played Starsky, said there are quick cars and there are fast cars. And this is, of course, there's no comparison to modern supercars or hypercars, but for a 1960s car, forget your Aston Martin DB4s or 5s, this is in a different league. Genuine pull. Ooh, cool. Yeah, the brake servo is working overtime. There's 2 brake boosters or servos in the boot, between the boot and the passenger compartment. So there's plenty of braking power, but again, the brakes haven't really been... You can clean up the discs and the pads and bleed the fluid and all that good stuff, but there's no substitute for driving these cars. Okay, it would have been less powerful originally with the 3.5 litre engine. To have one of these in the 1960s, I think performance-wise, this would probably have outperformed most Ferraris. Are beautiful. I mean, this is the, you know, these cars are wonderful to look at, but to drive them and experience them as they would have been at the time is just brings the whole thing to life. The brakes are pulling up straight now. Now they've had a bit of use. That beautiful 4-cam V12. And the gear change is lovely. The earlier gearboxes were not made by Lamborghini as they started to do later. This is an off-the-shelf ZF gearbox, which is a joy to use actually, but that noise I would describe as expensive. That is the same engine almost has got me hooked on Lamborghinis the first time I watched the Italian Job movie, and it's haunted me ever since. Just a stunning noise. It's just begging to be driven, this car. Brakes are pulling up nice and straight now. Ah, bellissimo! I feel like Raul Julia in Gumball Rally driving the Daytona. I'm not going to do a Raul Julia impression, but what's behind doesn't matter. What's in front is what matters. Oh, the torque of this thing, that combination of that all-alloy V12 and no weight to speak of, is just intoxicating. If I had this car, I would use it regularly. Wonderful. Well, thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll be back with something else very soon.